Abbiamo l'onore di essere qui con la dottoressa Carreiro, l'attuale preside dell'Università del New England, famosa in tutto il mondo per il suo insegnamento e per i libri che ha pubblicato in ambito pediatrico nel mondo osteopatico. So, hi, Dr. Carreiro. It's a pleasure to have you with us here. Thank you to accept our invitation, of course. And well, I would like to cover with you 3 topics today. In this short interview. The first one is the Dr. Ann Wells. I know that she was your mentor and she was very important for you. And in your opinion, the first question is, which is, in your opinion, the most important legacy she left, the most important things she left to us in her teaching?
That's a great question. I think it isn't exactly like a technique or something like that. I think what she left those of us who knew her and trained with her is that Anne was very, very clear. So she had been at the American School of Osteopathy. She started there just shortly after Dr. Still died. So she was trained by the faculty that he had worked with. And then she, of course, knew Dr. Sutherland for years and years and years, and Dr. Becker and all these people, they all worked together. Anne was very clear that she would say, this is what Dr. Sutherland said. This is what so-and-so said. I asked them this question. This is how they answered me. And then she'd say, if you said to her, well, what do you think? She would say, well, my thoughts are, and she always separated them. I think a lot of times what happens is people teach and they interpret what their mentor or their teacher said, and they put their kind of perspective on it. So then the student isn't getting the mentor's message. The student's getting that person's interpretation, right? The message. And so then eventually the message is no longer the message that was given. The message is like, interpreted, right? And we see that all the time, right? People claim that this is what so-and-so meant. This is what so-and-so said. Yeah, but that's not what so-and-so said. Go back and read what they wrote. And that's not what they said. So Anne was so precise. I mean, it was so difficult sometimes to get her to tell us what she thought, because she wanted to make sure that we wouldn't mistake her thoughts for Will's or for what they were teaching at the ASO or for Roland Becker's or for somebody else's. You know, she was just really, really clear. And I think that's an important thing for people to have, you know, because then it allows the learner to form their own perspective or impression on you know, that thing, that original thought, that original idea, that original perspective. It allows you to form your own, as opposed to you're forming your perspective on, like, we have it in the States, we call it telephone. You know, you whisper something in somebody's ear, they go around the circle, and by the end, the message is completely different from what it started as.
Right. I totally understand. And it is a great problem in general in osteopathy, because there is not a lot of things written in books. So, you know, it's very difficult. Each one, in my opinion, try to put himself inside the teaching. And so this is a great problem. Yeah. And in your understanding of her idea, which is her idea of primary respiration, or her concept of I'm asking this because I remember your lecture during an AAO conference about Ann Wells, in which you propose her way to evaluate the body, talking about the thoracic respiratory system, and not the primary respiration, which was very interesting for me. But which is, in your idea, her idea of primary respiration?
So primary respiration is different than thoracic respiration, but sometimes we get so caught up in feeling this motion, this thing that we attribute to primary respiration, we're not paying attention to the fact that when the person just breathes in and breathes out, the mechanics of the hydraulic system, the lymphatic system, the low pressure system, the mechanics of the body are not functioning optimally. You know, what Anne used to say is when you get a baby, the most important thing to start, forget their head, forget what anything looks like. Make sure everything is just moving when they breathe. And when they come back, most of the things that you thought were problems will probably have resolved on its own, because the inherent forces within the body will address a lot of these issues. So they're both very, very important. But primary respiratory mechanism, you know, she never defined it. She would go back and talk about Sutherland's descriptions of the coiling and uncoiling of the central nervous system and mitochondria, because of course, after Sutherland died, a lot more research came out about mitochondria. And in the 80s, there was a wonderful article in Scientific American that talked about cellular respiration, but it was like mitochondrial cellular respiration. And she thought that article really was pointing in this direction of what primary respiration was. Now, how it goes from this cellular thing to something that we feel, like she never discussed, you know, she would have thoughts and we would have discussions, but she never would say, I think this is how it happened. It was more like somehow that's connected.
Yeah, right. Thank you. And this is very interesting because bring us to the second topic I want to touch with you, which is your books, the books you publish on in osteopathic in a pediatric field some years ago. And I read both of your books, and I can give you my personal idea about that. I found your books very interesting because they create a sort of line between books that talks about only osteopathic techniques or something like this, and books that try to put together this with a sort of more scientific approach or anatomical approach. And my question is, this is the reason why you decide to write these books? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And and if now you could have the possibility to add something to your books, what would you like to add?
Oh, you know, I think so you know, it takes about 2 years from the time you write a book until the time it's published. So a lot of the science in those books is out of date. And when you look at so many of the scientific discoveries that have unfolded since those books were first written and published, I think so many of them fill in the gaps between, you know, what we feel, what we see happening, what we think is happening. It kind of like fills in the story so much more. So, you know, something I was having in the back of my head is, should I go back? I would love to have the time to go back and just revisit everything, because there's just so much more. There's so much more data and information out there that allows you to think about these things differently and throw away some of the assumptions that we have about what we ought to do or how things work, but replace them with other more accurate and better understandings of how to interface with a patient.
Great. And another question about your book is your books. Which do you think could be the limit in which we can introduce, especially in books or in teaching, the old osteopathic principle related to the new scientific discoveries or the new scientific approach to osteopathy? Because the sensation is that your books are, you know, at the border between the two, the old osteopathic, the osteopathic principle, the old osteopathic principle, and science. And do you think this is the limit, or we could now a little bit go ahead and write something more related to manual osteopathic approach, or osteopathic old principle, what the Hen Wells, for example, said?
So I'm not sure I completely understand the question, so I'm going to try and answer it. And then if this isn't the right answer, if this doesn't address your question, let me know.
It's due to my bad English, I suppose.
No, it's not due to your bad English. No, it's not. It's not. So I think what sometimes gets lost, and this happens in medicine. Okay, this happens in general medicine. We get in the way we approach health or disease or the patient, we get more micro, fine. And what we lose is the fundamental that the body is a machine. So the fact that the body is a machine is what connects us to osteopathic principles, because the osteopathic principles are mechanical principles, right? So we put our hands on people and we go into this fluid system, or we do biodynamics, or we do whatever. And what we forget is the body is a machine. So you can go so far, in my opinion, you can go so far into that micro, and I'm calling it micro because it's like, I'm thinking, you're thinking about quantum physics, you're thinking not you, but someone's thinking about quantum physics, or they're thinking about how things relate to each other. They think about cellular structure, they think about mitochondria, they're thinking about all these little things and how they work together, and maybe they help us feel rhythms or feel different, you know, levels.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
But it's so easy when you do that to forget that the elbow has to go like this. Okay. And so
it's very clear in this way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of like, I think what Anne kept hammering over and over again was, don't forget that the elbow has to go like this. And don't forget that when the elbow is not going like this, every time you breathe and all the muscles and fascias move, that has an influence on those little mitochondria and sodium and potassium receptors and everything else. So yes, it's great to think about all those other things, but when you're finished, go back and make sure the elbow can do this.
Yeah, right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it was part of the answer of my question. Well, the question was more related to yes, in which way we can try to, with new discoveries in science, try to go a little bit over.
Sure.
Yeah, so the answer is correct to say, okay, yes, we can go to talk about quantum physics, but doesn't matter. But we have to go back at a certain point, because
Right.
Yes, the answer is correct. Well, the last topic I would like to touch with you, you know, I don't know if you know this, but now in Italy we are finishing the process of recognition of osteopathy by law and by the government, and so I hope that in a few months probably, we will be recognized and we have the possibility to be considered part of the health system in Italy. And the process, of course, was long. And I don't know if it will finish soon, but we guess that it will finish soon. But I would like to compare it with what happens in the States. What happened in the States? I know that you were very involved in all this. If you can just give us a picture of what happened from the beginning of the
So right. So from the beginning. So the legal recognition of osteopathic medicine in the States, the system is each state has to, you know, make their own decision about what they're going to recognize and what they're not going to recognize. So in the States, what happened was by probably the late 60s, early 70s, all of the states in the United States had formally recognized osteopathic physicians as practitioners who could, who could see patients, and they were licensed, blah, 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 like that. That process began during World War I and World War II. What happened was all of the physicians were called up. And so there was nobody to take care of patients here. Yeah. And so osteopaths started taking care of patients. And then when the war ended, it just kind of like those people just kept seeing. So it was this gradual process that happened. One of the key places, and a lot of people think about this, is we had an issue in California where the MDs were tired of having the DOs around. So they basically said, if you paid $50, you could get an MD license. And by virtue of doing that, they were saying it was the same thing. You had to do a few extra courses or something. And so that was leveraged by a lot of the states that still hadn't officially licensed DOs. And those states said, look, if California is saying it's the same thing, that's the largest state in the country, that has the most physicians. So that was used. And so that was kind of like the leverage that allowed people to move forward. Being recognized by your government is different than being recognized by the local hospital that lets you go into, right? So that has been a very different process, okay? And you can be recognized legally, so you can get paid and you can do this and you can do that. But if there's a system, and I don't know what the system's like in Italy, but if there's a system where you can get closed off from a group, that becomes hard. So even now there are states where I'll tell you, there are hospitals that will frown upon giving privileges to a DO, and the DO may have to take extra steps in order to get practice rights. Now, that ultimately is going to change, because in the States, after you go to college, you go to university, then you go to medical school, then you do a residency. Up until 2020, you could do an MD residency or DO residency. So as a DO, I could go to an MD residency, or I could do a DO residency. If I did an MD residency, then the hospitals and stuff were like, okay, you're okay, you did an MD residency. But if I did a DO residency, some of those hospitals would be like, man, I don't know. Now, all the residencies are the same. So going forward, that barrier has gone away. However, that's a double-edged sword, right? Because in order for that barrier to go away, in some people's mind, oh, it means you're the same as. And so now the osteopathic population, our community, is constantly now having to show how we are different. Yep. Because it took so much energy to show, yes, we can do what you can do, so you can license us. We can do it. We do it a different way, maybe. We do it from a different viewpoint, maybe, but we can do the same thing. That now it's kind of moved all the way over here that, oh, so you are the same.
Yeah. This was my second question. What did you win in this process, and what did you lose?
Right. And it's a struggle, and it's very difficult to articulate, to describe, because there are lots of MDs who are holistic, right? Who want to, mind, body, spirit, like that's a big thing all over the world now, everybody. So it's hard. Yeah. Okay. We've been doing it since 18 something, but still now everybody does it. The piece of the body as a machine within that framework is not necessarily something that other professions hold on to. Some professions just have the body as a machine. You're a chiropractor, you're a physical therapist, and some people have mind, body, spirit, and that's in medicine, but they don't have that whole picture. And you know, in my mind, sometimes the way I think about it, because I do think it is a philosophical, and I'm just speaking for myself now. I think it's a philosophical process. I think it's in Italian, do you understand paradigm? So like a way of looking at something.
Paradigma.
Yeah. So I think it's a paradigm. And I think, you know, when somebody trains in an osteopathic medical school, even if they don't do OMT, I'm lousy at it, I can't do it, they say. They still learn to think that way, right? So they have that way of thinking when they look at a patient. And I can't tell you how many you know, physicians in hospitals will say, I can always tell or patients, I can tell the DO from the MD, even if they're both surgeons, even if they're both cardiologists, even if they're both, right? Because it's just the way the DO kind of thinks about things, goes at things, right, is just different. And, you know, in some ways, maybe it's the difference between making, you know, making bread if you're English and making bread if you're Italian. It's wheat, it's flour, it's salt. There's something different.
I guess.
You know, I mean, like I don't know how to explain it, but there is some, even if they look the same, there's just something different.
Okay. This was a really great answer. Yeah. Okay. Last question. If you can, what would you like to take from European osteopathy in the States? What would you like to have? Or in other words, in your opinion, which part of in osteopathic field of osteopathic manual medicine is better done in Europe compared to the States? If we have something here, in your opinion, that we are doing better, you can say no, of course.
I don't think it's about doing it better, but I think you have more freedom.
Yeah, more freedom. Why
I think you have more freedom to practice, yes, because you're not part of the system. Right? When you become part of the system has rules, the system has guardrails. It's very difficult to go out of the system.
Right.
So, and I've said this to my European colleagues for years and years and years, be careful how far you move into the system. It's okay, it's great to be recognized that people value you, but don't go to the point where now you've got to follow their rules, live by their guidelines. The only way, you know, now in the States to get paid, I mean, the hoops you have to go through to get paid that have nothing to do with caring for a patient, nothing to do with taking care of your patients. But if you want to make a living, it's what the system requires. And because we don't look like the system, right? Because we're not the same, and the system is built on a model that looks very different from the way we approach health and healthcare. You're always trying to figure a way to fit in what you need to do or how you want to interact with the patient into this system that was designed not for that kind of an approach.
Yeah. Great. This is fantastic. Dr. Carreiro, Jane, thank you so much for this interview and for your time. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Lele. Take care.
Yeah.